Nice Radio Callaloo presents Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative and yes, certainly controversial socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard only on Nice Radio. First aired on Saturdays at 6 p.m. with repeat broadcasts on Sundays at 9 p.m. Remember, you can always catch us on the World Wide Web, www.niceradio.info. You can check out our Just Another Look blog, www.justanotherlook.com. You can always check us on YouTube. I am, of course, Keith Joseph. Today, dear friends, is Saturday. It is the 2nd day of May 2020. Welcome to another edition of Just Another Look. Of course, yesterday was the 1st of May. And as someone asked, why, if it is recognized globally as Labor Day, we continue to call it May Day? And after thinking through it for a while, the only conclusion we can come to is that in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have lost our sense of understanding the meaning of Labor Day. We have forgotten how Labor Day came to be and what it means for workers across the world. What it means for trade unions across the world, except perhaps St. Vincent and the Grenadines. One of the things that we recognize about labor, those who labor, and the trade unions talk about let those who labor hold the reins. Left-wing political parties adopted that for the most part. Let those who labor hold the reins. Let them have a share, a stake in the governance of their respective countries. Let them have a role to play in the organizations to which they contribute their labor. But in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, all of that seemed to have been lost. Just Another Look is of the view that in 2000, the labor movement in St. Vincent and the Grenadines surrendered itself to the politics of the day. There's reason for us to believe that the sense of loss of the significance of Labor Day started under the James Michel administration. But it came to a crashing halt under the Unity Labour Party. While under the James Michel administration, we began to see a decline in the observance of Labor Day, because of course we tried to make sure that it was something else. We started talking about fishermen and this, all sorts of other things. Under the Unity Labour Party, an organization that committed itself, at least ostensibly, to quote-unquote labor, an organization that consistently speaks of quote-unquote labor love, which people are still trying to determine what in terms of its significance. Here was a party that on the official side suggested that it had something to do with support for the working people. That once it got into office, talked about a totally different thing, so that at the end of the day, the labor movement in St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been totally emasculated. Totally emasculated. And you've come to recognize that in Labor Day more than any other time. The labor movement does not really have anything to say to the workers of this country on Labor Day. Because the movement is so caught up in playing patsy to the ruling regime that over time it has lost its significance. We saw it in 2000 when it started. And they've never really recovered. The Trade Union Congress, what is that? Instead of this Grenadines. What is it? What is its relevance? It has none. Absolutely none. The labor movement, which at one point in 2000 was demanding as much as 30% increase for public servants, people working in the public service, 30% increase, was supported by a political regime that once it got into office has not ever once raised the prospect of an increase even remotely close to that 30%. So once you got into office, you found all sorts of reasons, even though you were talking about being on the cusp of economic takeoff. You never once got even remotely close to talking the same garbage that was being talked about just a few months before to justify a 30% increase for public servants. And when in the past accusations were leveled at the Annamustis regime as beating up on public servants, the public servants have now come to recognize for themselves the truth. Because they recognize that the capacity of trade unions to negotiate new wages and salaries for and on their behalf have been essentially stymied. And you saw that not long after taking government. So that you had a 3-year hiatus in terms of no discussions with anybody on wages, because it was not possible to give them anything. And so you ended up with a wages and salaries freeze without any real explanation to the very workers that you love so dearly. You knew at one point in time you couldn't make even what you had agreed to, and you talk about give me a chance to catch my hand. You weren't saying that when the time comes, when you were in opposition. But once you hold on to the reins of governance and you have an understanding of how the dynamics of the economy works, you talk about give me a chance, let me catch my hand. I'll give you a little bit later on. So that the gamesmanship that we have seen over the last several years with the political parties and at least some of the trade unions has left the labor movement in St. Vincent and the Grenadines totally emasculated. Remember, in the early days of the ULP administration, there was an attempt to get the school children involved, to get grammar school students involved in observance of Labor Day. Now, there's hardly any discussion with the students of this country as to the significance of Labor Day. Nobody talks about it in their history classes. Nobody talks about it in their social studies classes. And the leadership of the trade union movement are so emasculated that they themselves do not even talk about it. The labor movement in this country has all but sold itself out for what? For political gain? What have they sold themselves out to? What we are sure about is they are totally emasculated. And we can say with a certain measure of justification that they have become heavily politicized. So the world observed Labor Day on Friday, the 1st of May. St. Vincent and the Grenadines just kept painfully quiet. The labor movement, for all intents and purposes, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines has long since died and has long since been buried. They're actually being buried under the Unity Labour Party. So much for labor and an understanding of what it means to be a worker in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We want to continue to look at the COVID crisis, and we want to start by making reference to some statistics. Taiwan, which appears to be our biggest international ally, and for which we remain committed, and we want to get them into the United Nations. We want to get them just about everywhere because they've been helpful to us. One is not sure of what Gonzalez's position was relative to Taiwan versus China prior to his assuming office as Prime Minister in 2001. That remains something of a mystery. And just another look has always asked, what was his own relationship with China prior to his assumption of office? And had he not, at the time, recognized that there was a significant chunk of money provided by Taiwan to the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines just prior to the general elections, which, of course, he was later able to have utilized for some of his early projects. Had he not recognized that, would he have stayed with Taiwan, or would he have done like some other Caribbean governments and switched to China? Those are some important questions that you need to take into consideration, because you have to understand the politics of Gonzalez. And that while he may deem it progressive, others may deem it particularly opportunistic. Because opportunism has to do with putting opportunities by and large for oneself and one's own image and one's own approach to governance and other aspects of politics. So that it can later be justified if the results work in one's favor or one's party's favor. And you remember that in spite of everything, with that chunk of money available that he was able to access right away, he still attempted to suggest to the nation that he received a bad hand. Clearly, he did not have enough of an understanding of economics and of finance to be able to analyze critically what was happening. If he continues to suggest that he received a bad hand, then he knows absolutely nothing about economics and finance. That is clear. He may want to suggest otherwise. He did political economy, by the way, not economic and not finance. So one has to understand the approach of Gonzalez to governance and the way in which he packages or repackages things for what appears to be political convenience. But Taiwan is our biggest international ally. Taiwan has a population of 23.78 million people. But Taiwan has 429 cases of COVID-19 and 6 deaths. Taiwan, our biggest ally. Cuba, also one of our biggest international allies, has 11.34 million people, just under half the population of Taiwan. But it has 1,537 cases of coronavirus and 64 deaths. Venezuela, which has a larger population than Cuba and Taiwan, a population of 28.87 million people, has 375 cases of the coronavirus and 10 deaths. So 2 out of the 3 of our allies have fewer cases and fewer deaths than Cuba, which has 11.34 million people. But we have brought Cuban doctors and nurses. So from the sheer statistics, one would have imagined that there must have been something that Venezuela and Taiwan know and are perhaps doing that Cuba does not appear to be able to do in terms of the containment of the number of cases in their particular countries and the number of deaths. So from the sheer statistics, one would have imagined that while we appreciate the internationalism of Cuba over all these years, that if we really wanted to look for help, yes, we've received certain things from Taiwan. Taiwan has offered some money and some equipment and so on and so on. But clearly, you want to know more from those who appear to be most successful in containing and treating the virus. So out of sheer logic, it is difficult to understand why it is, because of the particular relationship we have with Taiwan and their capacity to provide the assistance that you believe you may have wanted, we would have opted to accept the assistance from Cuba and from Venezuela and from Taiwan, but not spend a lot more time having the Taiwanese in particular explain to us how they have been able to engage in the containment of the virus and have so few deaths. May be interesting to know what is happening in Venezuela either. What we're trying to say here, dear friends, is that if you are serious about adequately addressing the COVID-19 pandemic, you look to places where the responses of the administration, the health authorities, have been exemplary. That's why some people are asking what happened in South Korea. They're also interested in what happened with Singapore, which at one point was being touted as one of the best responses in the world. And then suddenly it started to spike. In other words, just as we said last week in our program, our approach to the coronavirus does not appear to engage us in research. We are particularly weak in this aspect. So while we are anxious to talk about how well we are doing in responding to COVID-19, that is not sufficiently acceptable. Just talking about it is not sufficiently acceptable. We have not been making a significantly studied approach to this in order to be able to ensure that we get the best advice. The best advice. And where possible, the best personnel to work with us. We're not saying that we don't appreciate Cuba's internationalism. But we're saying when we look at the statistics, we ought to be concerned how it is Cuba, within our region, has such high figures, relatively speaking, both in terms of cases and in terms of deaths, relative to two of our major international partners, Taiwan and Venezuela. So, is it all we wanted from Venezuela was tests? All we want from Taiwan is some equipment? Don't we want to know how? The how about it? So, what was the basis for the request that we have made so far for assistance? Did we examine how to treat the virus? Or is it that we felt we didn't know that, oh gosh, man, we have an outstanding expert in Gerald Thompson. Yeah. You're an expert. Did we really examine how to treat the virus before we determined where we were going to look for assistance? Or did we do as we normally do? Did we examine data regarding the number of cases per population? The number of deaths per population? The number of recoveries per population? Did we examine the success or failure rate of our friends to whom we can turn for assistance? We keep saying, time after time, on Just Another Look, Vincentians must always seek to apply their critical thinking skills. Don't worry with the old talk from the politicians and the mamagism that you so often get because they want your vote. Regardless of which political party or which politician comes to you, always apply your own critical thinking skills so that you can make sense out of nonsense. Because much of the time, it is nonsense that we are being fed. There is an assumption that for all the talk of an education revolution, that you're not sufficiently educated to see through the nonsense that is being fed to you by the politicians. It is one thing you must always take from your education, is your capacity to engage in critical thinking in all aspects of life. Without it, you are hardly useful. We've come to recognize, dear friends, and we spoke about it a few weeks ago, about the absence of global leadership. We've watched the decline of global leadership over the past 4 to 5 years. There is no significant global leader in the world today. None. Just as there isn't any in the Caribbean. There's nobody that you can feel has a command and and attains the respect of the international community enough that we can point to this person as a leader. We don't have that. We've recognized that as we have improved and enhanced technology, as countries have seen growth consistently in their economies, that they have become increasingly selfish. The international community, like CARICOM, is today exactly the same in respect of the crabs in a barrel syndrome. Look at them at any point in time. It's a pathetic lot. Pathetic. And you see it in CARICOM. The seeming grasping after turf. The seeming anxiety to come forward and showcase, I am the biggest one here. I am the most successful one here. Blah, blah, blah. Instead of seeking to help the people of the region. Instead of seeking to help the people of the world. Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, has come to that same conclusion. In a recent interview on the BBC, Guterres says the world is not together in the face of what is a global pandemic. Can you imagine that? We are facing a global pandemic, and the head of the United Nations is pathetically concluding that the world has not been able to come together to confront a global pandemic. Yeah? Guterres says that what transpired with the global spread of the virus has to do with the world's failure to come together. You recognize we have a global pandemic. And the world leadership today is so pathetic that they cannot come together. You understand that? So if they can't come together to save the lives of the citizens of the world, what we expect them to come together on? The world is today more divided than ever. And there is no quote-unquote Cold War. Can you imagine that? There is no Cold War. Guterres sought to explain in the BBC interview how countries might come together for what he deems a greener future. But you may recall that just a few programs ago, Just Another Look explained the chronic reality of the absence of any genuine leadership at the global level. Politicians globally are looking after their individual survivals and their individual statuses more than they are looking after the people. That has been the case in the Caribbean since conquest. The people are seen as their fodder, their political fodder. And you can look at one country after another at the level of CARICOM, at the global level, and you see exactly that. The people are treated as the political fodder of those who lead us. Oh, they say all sorts of glowing things about how much they love you. But they love themselves first, they love themselves second, they love themselves last. And the minions that trace traps to them, groveling and even lying prostrate at their table to survive even off of the droppings. They have become so twisted, so psychologically distorted, that they know nothing else. And they keep regurgitating the same garbage that ill-directed, ill-equipped leaders continue to project. We are indeed in a global crisis. And that is manifested at the Caribbean level just as well. If the people continue to expect the politicians to look after their interests first and foremost rather than themselves, then you have missed the boat. Examine the reality around you. And look at the lifestyles of those who have become our leaders. Follow their growth in terms of economic and financial well-being and those of their families before and after they have taken political office. And understand the realities that confront us. So there is no genuine leadership at the global level. And this is manifested, unfortunately, in the response to the global pandemic of COVID-19, which has proven to be the biggest threat to our existence in recent times. Every country today is amongst the most selfish of all time. Every country today is among the most selfish of all time. And every country has attempted its own pathway to addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. There is today no single world leader capable of bringing the international community together. None. Just as there is no leader in the Caribbean capable of bringing the Caribbean together. None. They are the best examples of crabs in a barrel. In a very real sense, from our vantage point at just another look, the international community has missed out on an excellent opportunity for global collaboration. An opportunity to put aside one's differences. An opportunity to ensure a cessation of war and international conflict. We have missed out on all of that. Perhaps it is that we've gotten so accustomed to people dying because of international conflicts that we're not bothered at the fact that people are dying because of health issues. We've become so immune to death and illness that we're not really showing any major concern for what is happening around us. As someone said recently, yes, open the schools. What they say? Only a 2% might die. Well, hey, what's the big thing about that? Yeah? The value of life is perceived only as important by the politicians when they desire your political support. Trust us on that. Trust us on that. In our part of the world, the Caribbean, despite the old talk coming from individual heads of government, even when they come together, CARICOM's chronic ineptitude has been significantly highlighted by the COVID-19 pandemic. That is everywhere to be understood. The crabs in a barrel continue to look to go their separate ways. You've seen it on one issue after another. You've seen it on LIAT. You've seen it on BWIA and then Caribbean Airlines. You've seen it in terms of an agricultural policy for the region. You've seen it in terms of a health policy for the region. It's all old talk. The Caribbean is today genuinely no different from what it was at the time at the end of the Federation. We're still crabs in a barrel. We're still looking to say, well, we were the first to get onto the Security Council. We were the first to do this. We were the first to do that. We were the first to achieve this. That's all we do. Looking for a place in history. The people are the ones who are the pawns. The people are the political fodder of our political leaders. But COVID-19 in St. Vincent and the Grenadines continues to be an amazing thing. During the week just concluded, St. Vincent and the Grenadines once more returned to the sordid theme of the way in which we have been addressing or not addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. If you look at the Prime Minister, if you look at the Minister of Health, and if you look at the Chief Medical Officer, when they're having their briefing, they seem to think we are doing well. We are not. The chest thumping and the seeming bravado counts for nothing. Towards the end of the week, we were treated to the matter which we have been addressing for some time, that of communication. How are the authorities communicating with Vincentians about the pandemic? Since Harvey Farrell, a former senior health education officer, raised the matter of the seeming paucity of information on the pandemic, and his very clear delineation of a slew of recommendations. Since then, the Ministry of Health in St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been playing catch-up in respect of its communications with the Vincentian public on the pandemic. Since then, not before, since then. It took him to go public about the relative quiescence of the ministry's officials, of the governmental officials in health with regard to what was becoming a global pandemic. It took his initiative to do it. Farrell was not seeking credit for anything. He was merely a concerned Vincentian with a tremendous amount of health education, public health education, training and experience, who opted to deliberately use the media to actually start and encourage communications on the pandemic by the health authorities here. That's what he did. At the time of his pronouncements, Farrell recognized that the average Vincentian should have been scared. scared, if only because with the international news flooding the nation, and with the country experiencing its first case, there was a shameful silence on the part of the nation's health authorities. It was reflective of a lack of readiness. It was reflective of a seeming slothfulness on the part of those in authority to address a situation that the world was attempting to come to grips with. While people were being threatened about the laws of this country with regard to creating panic and mayhem and what have you, it does appear that there may well have been a measure of panic amongst the governmental authorities themselves. And that panic may have been to do with the fact that they were not themselves in control of the material. They were not themselves sufficiently au fait with what was happening. And therefore, there was a certain lethargy in their response to what was happening. Perhaps they thought that, like most things, it wouldn't happen here. In spite of the fact that our politicians have always been the ones to say, if the major advanced industrial nations sneeze, we catch cold. We say that all the time. The progressives were saying that for donkey years. So they ought to have been aware. And once they saw it starting, given the flow of traffic between us and the international community, we ought to have been better prepared. We weren't. Like most things, we don't think it will happen here. One could not have found it acceptable that St. Vincent and the Grenadines should allow itself to behave like some of the rest of the world, being left behind in the communications race while the pandemic spread across the world and impacted our country. Farrell's intervention may well have served to embarrass the local health authorities in particular and the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines more generally into beginning a process of informing the Vincentian public on the situation relative to the pandemic in our country. Of course, the problem was that Farrell used the NDP's New Times program on Nice Radio to make his intervention. It was perhaps the source he used to bring public awareness of the weaknesses in our approach to the pandemic. And that may well have been felt that he should not be credited for his timely intervention. But he wasn't looking for credit. He was concerned about the Vincentian society. So hence, having kick-started the process, the Ministry of Health started speaking to the nation about the pandemic after Farrell had brought it to national attention. The problem, however, was, and still is, one of communication. In today's world, politicians believe that they can only thrive if they are the ones doing all of the talking on all of the things that are happening in their respective society. They're quick to chop on themselves and say, I am the Prime Minister, I am the President, I am the one who should be talking all of the time. What they don't say is that I do not know all of the situation. I do not know everything. But how many politicians stand up in front of you and say, we don't know, we should follow science? And that's one of the good things you're seeing in reflection, you know. Obama would go down as one of the best presidents of all time. Of course he made mistakes, like so many other people. But in respect of health, and in respect of potential pandemics, he said very clearly, let us follow science. Let us follow science, not follow the politicians. He said, follow me, you know. He said, follow the science. Let us allow the scientists to do their work and to bring their expertise to bear on what concerns us. But no, the Caribbean political leaders, they know everything. They know everything. And if they don't know, they rush to get the information from you and then they pretend like they know. Isn't that what they do? Here in St. Vincent and Grenadines, we saw that with the Prime Minister and Howie Prince when Howie Prince was in charge of NEMO. Howie would be there as the quote-unquote communications person from NEMO. But the Prime Minister would be the one who telling you about the impact of the wind in a pending tropical storm and the dangers that are ahead, because he knows and he's the best one to explain it. He's the dramatist. He's the Wizard of Oz. And above all, he's Papa, seemingly all-powerful in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As we have seen elsewhere, therefore, friends, the national response to the pandemic has essentially been led by the political directorate, and unfortunately so. In the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as in some other countries, the fact that there are pending general elections makes it all the more important for political leaders to be seen to be the ones leading the process, because they are more concerned with winning the next election than about the well-being of the people, and hence the reason that they place the experts second to them in the briefings. But they will turn around afterwards and say, we are leaving it to the experts. But the experts, because of their precarious positions in terms of employment, dare not say otherwise. They lack that independence. They lack that authentic expertise that commands an independence in respect of their field. And that's the reason why we have asked if there has been a problem politically that prevents the chief medical officer from being the kind of expert she ought to be in leading the process. Because if you can't do it, come out of the people way and allow those with the expertise to do it. But if you are there, then show that you have the expertise and exude the level of confidence and competence that the nation requires of you in that position. Don't play patsy with the politicians. It doesn't become you. And so we were forced to say in our program last week that the briefings do not enable Vincentians to emerge from them with any greater measure of confidence after all these weeks of briefings. What we get is a daily political show, a fillip for the election process that is taking place. That is why we were able to say without fear of contradiction, what was presented as a stimulus package is a stimulus for whom and for what intent. Just another look is clear. It is all political. And we are saying that the politicians who prepare it are aware of it. That is the reason we chastise the New Democratic Party for allowing itself to be taken onto the Gonzales plantation a mere few hours prior to the official laying of the documentation in Parliament. When all of the nation knew, when the Chamber of Commerce had an audience, when the union leaders had an audience, the opposition political party did not receive that kind of audience that suggested they were considered important enough or critical enough to be part of the decision-making process relative to the package. It's a good thing anyway, because at the end, we recognize without fear of contradiction that what you got was an elections 2020. Elections 2020 rescue economic package. That's what it was. A rescuing of the Unity Labour Party. A rescuing of those who currently hold the reins of government so that they continue through, hopefully, for a 5th term of office. That's what it's about. And you'll see it unfolding. Look around and you'll see it unfolding. Look at the projects that they will talk about. But ask them whenever they come to talk to you about the thermal energy project. How much money we have spent in it and how much money we have lost in it. When they come to you, ask them about the stimulus package that leaves some people with cement, galvanized steel and lumber. Ask them about that. And about the disparity in its distribution, or particularly the criteria in their distribution. So as we have seen elsewhere, the national response to the pandemic has been led by the political directorate. It is a political response. And if you know Gonzales' politics, he puts politics above everything else. He's concerned about the political response. Because everything has implications for his politics. And for the politics of the ULP and the chances of the ULP in the elections. Of course, we may hear otherwise. But on occasions, we have even been treated to a bit of political diatribe that suggests that the matter of addressing the pandemic is being left to the quote-unquote experts in the field. However, the more one listens to the briefings, the more one reads the several pieces of communication, the more we come to an understanding that the politicians are not only in charge, but they seem to thrive in wanting to be seen, in wanting to be heard as the ones in charge. The early days of the pandemic reaching St. Vincent and the Grenadines are very, very instructive. Vincentians need to be ever mindful of the expose delivered to all of us by patient zero, Ranel Roberts-Williams. Her shared experience is reflective of just how unprepared we were and perhaps still are in some measure. Having returned home from an area where infections were happening, United Kingdom, Ranel insisted on being tested. She was told she didn't fit the profile, but she insisted she wanted to be tested. Luckily she did. The experience revealed that we were either simply underestimating the virus, underestimating our competence, or we simply did not know what to do. In her own words, Ranel wrote the following. Fortunately, we're quoting here, fortunately for me and those assigned to my care, my symptoms were mild and my illness was brief. My cough lasted approximately 3 days and I was isolated for 23 days. Each day during my isolation, I was asked to take my temperature and report the figures along with any symptoms to a doctor and a nurse via the telephone or WhatsApp. Apart from that, I received no other medical attention or medication. Apart from that, I received no other medical attention or medication. I continued, however, to exercise my personal responsibility, as we all should, in building immunity, eating healthily, and monitoring my symptoms. I was a bit disappointed that much of the information that I received about COVID-19 was from my own research. Many of the medical professionals that I interacted with were scared by their response and unsure when it came to basic information with respect to the virus. No official instructions, advice, or reading material was provided by any health official. End of it. What did we say earlier in the program? What did we say earlier in the program? Who was more scared? John Public? The people who were quote-unquote threatened and reminded of the laws for creating panic? Or the authorities here themselves? It's in Ranel's writing. You know, from the foregoing, I wish to dwell a little bit on Ranel's words. Each day during my isolation, I was asked to take my temperature and report the figures. Apart from that, I received no other medical attention or medication. But Ranel's information seems to vary somewhat from what Eyewitness News revealed in its article, on 12th March, where the Chief Medical Officer says, quote, "We want to reassure the Vincentian public that we are making every effort and we are ensuring that we keep the patient safe and we keep others immediately around and even wider safe." That's what Simone Kizabich told the press conference when the case was announced. They keep you safe, but uninformed? That's all? We ask you, dear listener, to be the judge here as to whether you believe that this was the best way to address Ranel's case. But we have a better understanding of what all this means when once more we refer to Eyewitness News article, quoting, Kizabich said that 80% of persons who